Coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome to the Gilmore Way podcast. I'm Kate.
And I'm Laura. Normally on this channel, we are a Spoilers All podcast, going over the show with a fine-tooth comb to connect moments and themes across the series and to look at real-world topics that interest us through the lens of Gilmore. But this week, we're going to take a step back a bit and zoom out to talk about the show more generally, with the goal of doing something of a primer on the show for those who haven't seen it and aren't sure why they should invest the time in doing so. This show is a big time commitment, but obviously one that we think is totally worth it. And we wanted to give you some information and tips as to how best to consume the show if you're sitting on the fence.
But before we get started, we have to give the sort of mandatory disclaimer. There is a potential for minor spoilers. We are not going to spoil anything major from the series. We're just going to try to do a high-level overview. And if there are some, we'll try to push them later and give a final warning for earmuffs and the eject button. And if you're feeling so generous, if you could smash that like button and leave us a comment, share this video with your friends. This is kind of the whole point of this video. It's like, if you know someone who you want to watch Gilmore Girls and you want something to send them, which is like, here, watch Gilmore Girls. That's what this is. So please send this to your friends who you're trying to rope in. And if you could subscribe, that would be even better. We love all the feedback and everyone who subscribes. So thank you for being here. And one last little disclaimer, there might be cat sounds because Laura's cat's been a little bit wild lately. So we make no apologies for our furry friends.
Yep. That being said, we're just going to get started with giving just an overview about what Gilmore Girls is, what the show is about, just so, again, if you're on the fence watching, without getting too deep into the plot, basically just an overview on what Gilmore Girls is all about. It's basically this show about an hyper-independent single-teen mother who ran away from a constricting life of privilege and from her rich, snotty parents at the age of 18 from Hartford, Connecticut, to a small, kooky town called Stars Hollow. She was taken in by the owner of an inn and given a job as a maid, where she worked her way up to be general manager. The show starts out with her angelic daughter Rory about to turn 16, which is the same age that Lorelai was when she got pregnant with her. Lorelai and Rory are best friends first, mother and daughter second, which creates an interesting family dynamic that has both perks and problems when things get too contentious. Rory is a gifted child with dreams of attending Harvard to be a foreign correspondent. And part of that dream is getting into a prestigious private school. But the problem is that a single mother who makes a respectable salary still can't afford the full cost for enrolling Rory at Chilton. So Lorelai has to swallow her pride, which is a lot of pride, and go to her parents to ask to borrow money for her daughter's education. Her parents are thrilled that Rory has gotten into such great school and are happy to help, but on one condition: that Lorelai and Rory attend their home every Friday night for dinner, because now that they are financially involved in their lives, they also want to be actively involved in their lives. Lorelai is not thrilled at the idea, as she has a very different outlook on life than her parents and has always chafed at their shallow materialistic values. The elder Gilmores open up Rory's eyes to a world of privilege that her mother ran away from, and conflict inevitably ensues when Emily and Richard's attempts to influence their lives grate on Lorelai's stubbornness for complete independence from outside interference. There are themes of class struggles, feminism, the importance of education, full circle generational trauma, and complex family dynamics throughout the show's 7 seasons and the 2016 Netflix revival, all along the way with healthy doses of will they, won't they relationships and small town charm, all executed with dialogue that is full of cultural references that will challenge you but delight you. You may have to Google some things from time to time and expand your cultural lexicon, but we think that's a good thing. This is also a show that lends itself to binging and rewatching because it has such quick dialogue that it can take multiple watches to plumb through all of the depths of the brilliance of the writing. And we know that can seem daunting, but we do think that it's a worthwhile endeavor. Because no matter how many times you watch an episode or run through the show, you're always likely to catch some joke or reference that you've never picked up on before.
Yeah, so Gilmore Girls is 7 seasons. It can be a very intimidating thing for people to get over. I know that there are people who have said that they don't love the first couple episodes, that they're having a hard time getting into it, that there's, too many characters, too much information to take in. It's not moving fast enough. There's not enough plot. And we want to tell you why we think you should push past the first episode or even the first season if you're struggling through, to give you a better overview of what to expect with the show without spoiling too much so that you get a sense of the content and the characters, but there will still be a lot of surprises because there are so many and it's such a wonderful show. Obviously, we love it a ton. We're here somewhere around the 100th episode of this podcast, and we're still not done breaking this down, which I think speaks to how much meat there is to the show. If you want to do that work, you don't have to. You can just passively consume it and enjoy the quick witty dialogue for what it is without thinking too deeply about it. It is, according to the Us Weekly special magazine that's behind me, one of the coziest series ever to grace the small screen. And it is no mere TV show. Each episode offers pure escapism into a world, well, an eccentric New England town, where locals speak in rapid fire witty dialogue filled with a heady mix of up to the minute pop culture references. It's described by Kelly Bishop in her recent memoir as smart, razor sharp, and unpredictable. The humor was a delight and utterly unique. Reviews included compliments like intelligent, creative, and sophisticated, warm, cozy, and quirky, makes you feel good, and gets under your skin and refuses to let go. So just those words. It's, I think, a glowing recommendation of why the show is worth your time.
Yeah. And cozy, I think, is an excellent summation of it. There's a reason why 25 years after the show has originally come on the air, that people are still rewatching year round, if not every single fall. Because at the end of the day, if you've had a tough day at work, if you're having drama at school, maybe with your friends or with a partner or just whatever life is throwing at you, it's something that you can come home and turn on at the end of the day. And it's just going to be a feel good for you, which I think is something that so many people get out of it.
Yeah, Entertainment Weekly just did a 25th anniversary entire magazine devoted to this. So the fact that it's still on your newsstands even 8 or 9 years now after the revival finished, I think that speaks to how much the show resonates with audiences, and not just women, not just moms and daughters, but everyone. There's this really unique intergenerational appeal, and it's family friendly as well. So like you can watch it with your mom or your sister or your grandmother, someone who maybe doesn't love all the swear words and um the high octane or the inappropriate things that happen in some other TV shows. Like they really stay away from that. The drama really comes from the interpersonal relationships. The banter, the back and forth is really where you find the heart of the drama. It's in the relational dynamics. And truly at the heart of all of that is the mother-daughter relationship of Rory and Lorelai as they work towards their dreams in this small idyllic town in Connecticut.
Yeah. And I think it also harkens back to, the past. And yeah, it was only 20, 25 years ago, but this was still a day and age where, you could only text after 9 and each text was like 10 cents. And, you just didn't have everyone at your fingertips in terms of social media. I mean, if you wanted to give your parents a call, call the landline, you couldn't just always text them or just ring up and be so dialed into everybody. And I think that was also a really fresh take to the show as well, that can just generate like a really strong feeling of nostalgia.
Yeah, and it's perfectly nostalgic. It's a time in living memory for most of us, but it was an age before everyone was attached to social media. And the town feels so insular and fantastical and like something out of a 50s sitcom, which the revival even pokes fun at by having Rory have multiple cell phones, only one of which, an old flip phone, actually connects to a network in Stars Hollow. It's like the whole town is constructed in a snow globe. And it doesn't feel like anything else on TV these days. Most things now are not what you would call comforting. This was still the era of network television where, there are 22 episodes in a season. It's not moving at a breakneck clip towards a huge explosive conclusion. This is truly feel good television to the point where even it was filmed on film. And so it has this soft, warm quality to it. It was filmed in California, but it constantly feels like a perpetual, cozy New England autumn. And that's why every year in fall, everybody has a rewatch season. We think you can watch it year round, but it is especially cozy for fall and winter. So it's just so easy to watch in that sense, where it's like nothing crazy is going to happen. Nobody's dying or cooking drugs or doing anything crazy and stupid. It's just sort of real life. It feels like a slice of life. And one of the reasons people stick with this show 25 years on is that relatability and the fact that, you know, these sort of family tensions will never truly go away. That's part of why it feels almost timeless, despite being, you know, very recognizably early 2000s. But, you know, after 25 years, the banter, the dialogue, even some of the references all still feel so fresh. So we think that it's never too late to hop on the bandwagon.
No. And there are certainly so many aspects of the show too that I think anyone, no matter what age you are, can relate to. Maybe you're a girl in high school who's just struggling to get through her classwork and, her course load. Maybe you're a single parent who's just trying to raise a kid. Maybe you are someone who is in a relationship with somebody and who's just struggling with that because there's drama there, familial, drama. No matter what it is, I think there's always going to be something in this show plot wise that'll draw you in and that can speak to you on some level.
Absolutely. From Rotten Tomatoes, it gets an average score of 88% on the popcorn meter, which is the percentage of users who rated it 3.5 stars or higher. So I think that's a pretty ringing endorsement. And I just also love the description on Rotten Tomatoes for the show overall. Set in a storybook Connecticut town populated by an eclectic mix of dreamers, artists, and everyday folk, this multi-generational drama about family and friendship centers around Lorelai Gilmore and her daughter Rory. Like, storybook Connecticut town. It's so dreamy and so easy to get into. You want to live in Stars Hollow. There is something about this town that has spoken to people to the point where the WB is still doing tours and dressing up the backlot like Stars Hollow every Christmas. And like, even if you'll note our matching Luke's Diner mugs, people want stuff like this because they want to feel that comfort and that connection to community that so many of us have lost in the last few years. And I think that's a big part of the reason why the show has surged so much in the last few years. It's still one of Netflix's highest streamed shows. It's got hundreds of millions of hours of views, and only about 100 million of those are us. So like, people are still watching the show.
Yeah. We'll probably take on a good percentage of that, but you make an excellent point. It isn't just us. And I think we've said this before in some of our other episodes that we've done, but just echoing what you said there as well, it feels like Connecticut, even though it was filmed on the WB lot. It just feels like it's those warm New Englandy vibes. It's why there are still, just events and conventions that are being hosted every single year, just celebrating this show. Just chalk up and continue to add on to the reasons why we love it. And you should just dive into it with us.
Yeah, the fact that we're still having an annual fan fest speaks for itself, I think. So again, join the fandom and join our cult because it's awesome. Yeah, so like the show just has, to this day, the critical acclaim for its witty dialogue, its cross-generational appeal, and its very effective mix of humor and drama. There's never anything that's so earth-shatteringly serious that is above being mocked for comedy by the writers. So even intense moments or moments where characters are going through grief or struggle or pain of some sort, there's always a joke to be had. And it's just such a unique style of writing. It's, again, not something you're going to get on any other show unless you watch another Amy Sherman Palladino property, because she has this way with words where most 40-minute show scripts are about 50 pages and hers are 80. So it's so crammed with fast-paced jokes, references to things, and just the character moments that come out of all of that are so satisfying to watch. There are epic rants and jokes and long dialogues of back and forth that just don't happen anymore. It takes from the screwball comedies of the 40s and from notable comics. There are so many inspirational things that Amy has brought to the table that nobody writes like this anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's because that writing is so strong that you don't get performances like that anymore. I mean, Lorelai Gilmore, Talk Fast, a mother-daughter relationship where, like we said, they're friends first, mother and daughter second. Kelly Bishop as Emily Gilmore, and just what a force of nature she is. You don't get those acting performances without writing to back it up. And that's just another singularity to this show.
Exactly. Okay, I've compiled a whole list of watch Gilmore Girls if you like. So I will start off with deep female leads you can ask questions about and psychoanalyze for years to come, or just female led shows in general.
Yeah. Watch Gigi if you like characters who don't need no man, but still manage to have steamy relationships.
If you like teen shows from the 2000s, the nostalgia is real as the show is full of 2000s fashion, CD collections hidden under floorboards, away from the prying eyes of strict mothers, VHS tapes, flip phones and pagers, and a notable lack of social media.
If you like obscure pop culture references that will send you down rabbit holes.
If you like an academic focus, we start out with Rory as a sophomore and follow her through Chilton and then college. So if you like shows that center around academic environments like I do, you'll enjoy the study spo and a smart main character whose nerdiness and commitment to her goals is fully embraced. It's very much a main character feature for her as she tries to balance school, romance, and family, and it's very motivational.
Yeah. If you like nerdy aspirational heroines, bookish characters, as Rory is the quintessential girl with a nose in her book, but somehow the dudes in the show are actually into that.
Watch if you like a small town setting. You take 3 left turns and you're back in the center of town. It's the kind of small connected community most of us can't relate to anymore, and it's a refreshing change from the intensity of shows set in big cities like New York or LA.
Watch Gilmore if you appreciate mother-daughter relationships. Lorelai and Rory, as we've said, are iconic for being best friends first, mother and daughter in second. And the relationship isn't perfect, but it's not one that I think you've ever gotten on any other television show.
Watch if you like lots of sarcasm and clever one-liners, well-constructed jokes that come back around.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of those.
Paired up with absolutely scathing takedowns and excellent rants.
Watch if you like shows that are slow and comforting that dramatize the mundanity of life. No shock value or violence, just very chill, deals with a lot of simple everyday problems.
Also watch if you want superb character development and engaging storytelling, along with perfectly drawn secondary characters. Stars Hollow Townies are, I think, are a prime example of that, and just a cast that is rounded out by sharp and distinctive women.
Watch if you like New England in the fall, or fall in general. Somehow it always feels like fall, even though it's really not, even though it's Burbank, California.
Watch Gilmore if you do appreciate fast-paced flowing and irreverent dialogue inspired by the screwball movies of the 30s and 40s. And we don't say that without reasoning. These scripts for every single episode were thick. Emphasis on the thickness, multiple C's there, because there is so much crammed in there that they had to talk at the speed of light just to get through all of the conversation. Or does light move at the speed of Gilmore?
I think it's the latter.
Maybe.
Watch if you totally resonate with intergenerational conflict and a focus on dysfunctional but loving families that are really relatable. Amy actually referred to it as an intergenerational freak show.
Yeah. Watch if you like coming of age stories, even for adults, people who don't always have it all together all of the time, but that's kind of relatable.
Watch if you love a solid soundtrack of unconventional songs and not just top 40.
Mm-hmm. And watch if you appreciate a show that will actually enlighten you and doesn't insult your intelligence.
Watch if you like no plot, just vibes. Amy has specifically referred to the plot of the show as stingy, doled out very slowly and by design. Plots are simple, drama comes from character interaction, and silly situations. Very, very silly.
Have we given you enough reasons? I mean, are we still, like, if we're still not selling this at this point in time, I don't know what more we can do for you.
Yeah, and I think if you don't think that like a slow show is for you because you think it's going to be boring, I actually found this, I think it's a Tumblr post. I think I never used Tumblr, but I think this is a Tumblr post from Cat Mask. I spotted this on Pinterest and it felt so much like Gilmore Girls that I had to throw it in here. I don't think that people actually dislike fluff in writing. It's just that not many people know how to write characters well when nothing high stakes is happening, and therefore the scenes feel bland or wasted. because they can only imagine people to be interesting during high action scenes and not during the slower moments in between. Likely because they consider their own life and the people around them uninteresting and cannot imagine characters they want to like to be anything less than larger than life, when in reality, the quiet humanity between action is the core of all good character writing. To be good at writing fiction, you must first stop looking at it as an escape from reality, but a mechanism through which to process it. And I think that's a perfect way to think about the show because, like I said, nothing big and earth shattering ever really happens, but there's so much character to grasp onto. And it is such good character writing that these people are still interesting, even though, they're a suburban mom and daughter and their biggest troubles are what's going on at work or school this week.
Yeah, this is never going to be an in your face jump scares or even jump drama moments that are just going to have you sitting there being like, oh my gosh, never saw it coming. What is going on? But you will still just end off every single episode wanting to know more and just being ready for next week to roll around.
Yeah. Okay, now we have a shorter list of reasons the show may not be for you. Number one, all you tolerate is high octane drama. I'm not much one for high octane stuff, though I did recently work my way through Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, both of which have some very heavy stuff and are very like gripping and thrilling in a way I'm not really used to. I often avoid it because of my anxiety. But I made it through. They were so well executed and the storytelling was so gripping that it overrode the bad anxiety for me. But it's more like edge of the seat, anxious anticipation. And, some people are really into that. And so the idea of watching something slow doesn't necessarily intrigue them. But I think that this is a great show, even if you need like a palate cleanser from something like that. I know when I finished Breaking Bad, I literally had to like take my heart rate down from that of a hummingbird by watching this show. So if you need something that's a bit of a different pace as a palate cleanser, this is a great show. But if you find yourself bored by anything slower than a car chase, maybe not for you.
Yeah. Also, maybe not the show for you if all you can tolerate is really fluffy sitcoms. And the show is not usually particularly heavy in terms of that level of content, but it's also not mindless TV where 2 plus 2 is 4. It will give you real life problems that these characters are working through, and it actually does require investment and attention to the plot and following along with their storylines.
Exactly. And number 3 is you have no attention span. This kind of ties into number 2. And you do have to pay attention to get the jokes. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of very quick dialogue. And you're like, what just happened? Because nothing happened. The comedy was in the dialogue. So, if you're the kind of person who can only watch a 20-minute show and not pay deep attention to something, this one might be a challenge for you. And, nothing against fluffy 20-minute sitcoms. I know that like most people are not always in the mood for something that requires too much depth. Like everything's got their place, right? We don't always have the bandwidth to pay that much attention to this kind of thing. And, I've tried this with my own family. I'm pretty sure we're all ADHD. And, trying to get people, especially when you're like watching as a group, because I tried this at Thanksgiving. I was trying to show them some of my favorite episodes to show them the true quality of what you get. Because my mom tried watching the pilot by herself and she couldn't get into it. There was too much world building for her. And I'm like, but that's where the magic is in these character interactions and in these quiet moments where they can make something funny out of something simple. And you really do kind of have to pay attention to those things to get to those moments of humor and be like, oh yes, okay, this has sunk in, instead of checking your phone and having me be like, mom, you have to watch this, like this is hilarious, this is where you get to meet Cat Kirk, stuff like that. So watch to figure out what Cat Kirk is. I don't think you'll be disappointed. But the show is somewhat challenging, but not in a terrible way. It's more rewarding when you're paying attention. So if you truly can't handle anything more than having it on in the background, then maybe it's not the right time for it.
Yeah. I agree. But I want to pose you a follow-up question to anyone who is still not sold on this after everything that we've just said. If you had to pick one episode that you would recommend to somebody to get them started on the show, which one would you point them to first, even if it's not from season 1?
Right. Some of the ones I was showing my family were from like season 3. So I think you can skip ahead. Season 1 is not my favorite. It's actually probably my second least favorite of the seasons. I have always said that I think Gilmore Girls truly becomes what it is by about season 2, episode 5. And so if you're having trouble getting through all of it, I think it's perfectly legitimate to skip ahead to something that is going to demonstrate the true quality and what makes the show so special. And then you can always come back to it, because we've heard time and time again that you come to the end of the show and most people just start it over again because they need more. They need to go back to Stars Hollow immediately. And so I think that if you want to skip ahead a little, a good place to start could be Rory's Dance, which is season 1, episode 9. For me, it really demonstrates the strength of performances and is very informative about a lot of the key relationships. So if you're interested in the sort of like mother-daughter dynamics and the parallel relationships of Emily and Lorelai's very strained relationship, because Emily is so conservative and Lorelai is so free-spirited, but also comparing that to Lorelai and Rory's very close, trusting relationship, that's a perfect episode for that tension. Another one I love is season 1, episode 16, called Starcrossed Lovers and Other Strangers. And for me, this one has a little bit of everything. It has some town shenanigans. It's like the first episode where we have a true town event, which really become a staple for the series. There are great relationship moments, especially for Rory. This is, she's in season 1 in her first relationship. And so there's a big moment that happens for her in this. And it's really funny. And it has a beautiful balance of comedy and drama. And then if you want to skip ahead even further, there's Bracebridge Dinner, which is not a perfect bottle episode, but it has like so many characters that you don't always see together coming together for sort of a very cozy, Christmassy kind of themed episode, if you will. It's not directly Christmas, but it very much has that feel. So very cozy, very easy to watch. What about you? What are some earlier season ones for you?
I'm just gonna, since you already talked a little bit about 1 and 2, I'm gonna jump ahead to season 3, episode 7. They shoot Gilmores, don't they? And I think that's a really nice and beautiful one to go to, because you see a lot of the Stars Hollow townies in it, and these people are so important and a fixture in Lorelai's life. It's why she will seemingly never leave this town or ever move away from it. But you really get to like highlight them and showcase them a little bit more. Specifically Kirk, Taylor, Miss Patty, but you also get the built-in relationship drama between Rory and some of her boyfriends, and seeing how that is starting to unfold for her in positive and but also in not so great ways. So I think it just really encompasses everything that show is about, with getting a lot of those supporting characters thrown in. So it's not just an entire episode focused on Lorelai and Rory. You really get to meet a lot of the people that are the heart of this show and make it what it is.
Totally. I agree with that. That's one of the ones I was showing my family. Are there any others before we move on?
That would be my go-to along with what you just said. So
fair enough.
I don't want to spoil too much here. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah. And we're going to have another episode after this where we're going to expand on this a little bit more and talk slightly more in depth about a few episodes and sort of like the best in certain categories, or like start here if you want this kind of episode. So if you want more, there will be more. If 3 episodes is not enough of a recommendation for you, there will be more. But okay, what would you say to the guys who are on the fence? Is Gigi for the boys? Why should guys watch a girly show? Girly show in quotes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this show is written for, and I think directed towards, a women audience, but there are absolutely moments and characters in it that I think men can appreciate. Luke Danes is a very I think strong, masculine figure within the show, who can still just, again, be in touch with his feminine side. Again, not want to spoil too much there. But I think he is a really good encapsulation of a strong male lead. And there's a lot to be learned from him as to how to be a good person, how to treat the women in your life. There's a lot of interpersonal drama that he deals with regards to not only his relationships from a romantic perspective, but also familial relationships, when he has a nephew that comes into his life that he has to assume care for. So I think there's a lot there that can be taken away that you can learn from as a guy, just with how you're living your life too, because a lot of those things are going to be relatable as a father figure, as a partner to somebody. So there are moments still that I think you can appreciate and just draw from, even as a guy.
Right. I know plenty of guys who love this show, sometimes even more than their female partners. It's, it's not just for girls. It does showcase a lot of the female experience of life and relationships. But if that for some reason isn't worthwhile to you, maybe that's something you should unpack. I think if you have a mother, a daughter, a sister, the show is definitely going to enlighten you on sort of the female experience of life. And I think possibly one of the most stereotypically feminine things about it, quote unquote, is just that there is such a focus on talking and on emotions and relationships. But I think it's beneficial for everyone to maybe learn something from the show and what characters do right and what they do wrong.
Yeah. And you will not be disappointed again across the board from those characters and their development, from the writing, from the acting, even from the camera work and the behind the scenes stuff that I think goes so underappreciated from start to finish in every aspect, costuming, music. This show just did everything right. And it's why, again, Netflix still has it as one of their top rated shows in going into 2025, because people just understand that it was done so well, if not perfectly.
Right. And I think last but not least, I've got one more question. Do you think Gilmore Girls still holds up? I mean, you kind of just answered, but like,
Yeah.
a little more. Give me a little more.
Yeah. I mean, there are problematic lines and things that are said. This was a show that got started back in, the 2000s. So we weren't as maybe understanding or as compassionate as we are right now in this day and age with some of those topics. But yeah, it does still hold up. This is still something that, again, people are just relating to, that they can watch and recognize and see themselves in, that they can turn on at the end of the day and be like, I can still relate to this character. I started off this show as a teenage girl relating to Rory. Now I relate a lot more to Lorelai, just as, a woman getting into her middle age years. But that's why I think it is still holding up, because there's that progression that as you're aging, or even if you started off as Lorelai's age and maybe now you can relate to Emily, just there's a progression there, and there's characters that you're always going to be able to say, I can see myself in them.
Right. I think for a show that aired in the 2000s, it has aged remarkably well. I mean, brace yourselves for some light fat phobia, LGBT jokes, some racial stereotyping, especially of Asian Americans. But I don't think any of it is truly done in malice. And I think it just sort of was part of the comedic context of the time. And so if you can sort of view it with that critical lens, it won't maybe bother you so much. So I truly think that a lot of it does feel timeless and easy to relate to, like you said, not only through time, but through your own life and through the ages and eras of your own life.
Very well said. I concur.
All right. So I think that basically wraps us up for this one. A nice little short one, which is unusual for us. But we wanted to make this really accessible so that, like I said, you could send this to someone to try to convince them why they need to watch this show. And it wouldn't scare them that it was an hour and a half.
Yeah, we'll go a little bit more in depth as to why we love it, some of our favorite moments throughout the season, some of our favorite episodes, maybe get a little bit more spoilery than we were this time around with not giving you, everything in the show from start to finish. And then we will also follow that up with a separate episode where we bring on other voices and other friends that we've made within the GG fandom to have them just talk about their experiences with the show and why they relate to it and why they love it also. So it's not just going to be us talking at you. You will hear from other people too. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, thank you for being here. Remember to smash that like button on the way out if you haven't already. It really helps us. It's free, it's fast. We appreciate every thumbs up we ever get. And hopefully, we will see you next Friday for dinner.
Take care.
Bye.